Beyond the architecture of desire, the radical transcendence of the fourfold Purushartha and the ontological dissolution of the egoic mind of the Ashtavakra Gita 16.1, when the plunge into the abyssal depth of the Ashtavakra Gita 16th chapter, 5th verse, we encounter a philosophical intervention so radically subversive and ontological shattering that is the completely dismantle the very foundation of human psychological striving, offering a paradigm shifting antidote to the modern world of obsession with the achievement, goal setting, and the spiritual acquisition. The verse idam kritam with नेति द्वंद्वे मृक्तम यदा मनम धर्मार्थ काम मोक्षेषु निरपेक्षम तदा भवेत् इदम कृतम इदम नेति द्वंद्ववीरा मुक्तगम यदा महम धर्म मार्थकोक्स मोक्ष कामेक्षु nirpeksham tada bhavet does not merely offer a gentle guide to inner peace. It delivers a lethal strike to a egoic machinery itself, exposing the insidious trap of the binary mind and perpetually oscillating between the perspective this should be done, idam kritam, and the prohibitive this should not be done, idam na iti. In the hyper-driven, goal-obsessed cultural landscapes of the US and the UK and the modern globalization world, where the human worth is inextricably tied to productivity, moral posturing, and the restlessness pursuit of the self-optimization, Ashtavakra ancient wisdom cuts though the noise and the surgical precision, revealing that the very act of judging our action as the right or wrong, productive and wasteful is the root cause of the existential exhaustion. The mind, by its very structural design, is a dualistic engine fueled by these Dundwas, pair of opposites, as long as they remain trapped in the algorithmic loop of the evaluating, deciding, and executing based of the moral, practical imperative, it remains a slave of the psychological time and karmic bondage. However, the moment the mind is completely liberated from these dualities, Dundavira Muktam Yada Maham, a profound ontological collapse occurs if the mind does not merely calm down the achieve temporary state Zen-like tranquility, but rather it loses structural integrity and dissolves into the boundless, unconditional experiences of pure awareness because without the fraction of opposites, the logic I navigates these opposites simply ceases to exist. But the Ashtavakra does not stop at the magnificent dissolution of the moral and psychological binary. He escalates his radical teaching to an almost unimaginable dynamism of declaring that upon the liberation, the seeker must become the entirely indifferent, completely desireless, absolutely detached, and nirpeksham for the four fundamental pillars of the human existence dharma, righteous and moral duty, artha, material wealth and secular successes, kama, sensual desire and aesthetic pleasure, and the most shockingly, moksha, spiritual liberation itself. This is where the words transitional from the profound psychological insight to a mind blowing spiritual revolution. Because while the masses easily understand the need of transcendence and the base pursuit of artha and kama, even the more refined pursuit of dharma, the idea of renouncing the desire of moksha and the ultimate philosophical taboo and the final, most insidious trap of the spiritual ego, the century seekers across the east and west have been conditioned on the view of moksha and the enlightened as the ultimate prize, the final trophy to be won on the spiritual marketplace. But the Ashtavakra ruthlessly exposed the desire of liberation as the most subtle and unbreakable chain of all, arguing that the long as long as you desire moksha, you are that implicitly accepting your current state of bondage. There is the reinforcing the very spiritual market Ashtavakra ruthlessly exposed the desire of liberation, most subtle and unbreakable chain of the all, arguing that as long as you desire moksha, you are implicitly accepting your current state of the bondage, thereby the reinforcing the very dualities you seek the escape, desire, liberation, and project freedom into the future, creating a psychological distance between the seeker is the present and the liberating being in the future, which is the complete contradiction of the non-dual truth. You are steadily non-dual truth. You are the already and you have always been the infinite, unbound Brahman. Therefore, nirpeksham in the context of moksha does not mean a nihilistic rejection freedom, but rather than the breathing, realizing that you are already so utterly indefinitely free that the very concept of seeking liberation becomes the absurd as the fish frenetically searching the ocean for the water. This absolute indifference, desireless, is not the dark, apathetic, lethargic tamasa, nor it is the detached aloofness of sociopath. Rather, it is a blazing, luminous fullness and supreme sattva, a state of such profound the existential plenitude that the individual lacks of the absolutely nothing and therefore desires absolutely nothing. In this ultimate state of nirpeksham, the Jivanmukta, the liberated, while living, operated in the world, not out the compulsion, duty, or a desire for a future reward, but the through the spontaneous, effortless, and perfectly attuned flow, the sahaja, naturalness, acting exactly as the moment of demands without the heavy burden of the doer. For the modern seekers drawing the burnout, the hustle culture, the anxiety, all the judgment and the desires alone with the pure and unadulterated consciousness to the simplicity. Signing the effortless, it is the own literal internal self luminous glory, completely untouched by the chaotic dance of the phenomenal world. As the supreme height of the non-dual dualities or ultimate unintellectual and spiritual peak where the mind exhausts itself the futile quest for the attainment only the collapse into the silent roaring bliss of its own innate uncreated and imperfectly complete nature, proving once and for all that the highest state of human existence is not about the becoming something more, but more realizing with absolute unshakable certainty that you are already everything. Therefore, you need to do absolutely nothing.